Hello, this is Jay. Welcome to my channel. Today I thought I'd talk to you about this little device. It's one of those things that you could connect two of these camp fuels with and you can kind of refill an emptier one. I'm going to talk to you why I have it, what I've been using it for, and why I'll keep using it, and why I think it's a great idea for backpacking. It's also really useful for car camping. If you're in a van, it's not as useful because you would probably just wind up using one of these guys. It's a lot bigger. In a car, you just don't have the space for it. Maybe if you have a big car, but in a van it's good, but in a car not so good. I even use one of these stoves with this. It's basically just a camp stove that attaches to a propane tank using one of these little adapters here. And with this adapter, I can actually even use a camp stove like this. But when you do this, you can see how high it gets with the pot up here. So in a car, that's why it's just no good. Although in a van, you may get away with it. Now, with one of these guys, you can keep the stove lower so it's not as high. But then you also have to protect the bottom. You need something on the bottom so it doesn't melt or overheat, because the flame will be very close to the bottom. You don't want anything catching on fire or melting in your car. Or even if it's not melting, you don't want anything emitting fumes from the heat. You may not know about it, but long term could not be the best. So what I like to do is actually just use one of these in a car in certain situations, because with the stove like this, it's not too tall and it's manageable. I do have little feet that I attach on this so it's more stable in the car so it doesn't tip over, and I do keep the windows open when I do it, and I only use it to boil water, so it's only for a few minutes each time. Now, as you know, you can get camp stoves like this in a variety of sizes. There's the extremely large size like this MSR, which is net weight of 16 ounces, and I have a jet boil here one with the net weight of 3.53 ounces, so it's much smaller. The odd thing is this has over 4 times as much as this, but this probably only costs half of this. So if you have one of these, you can refill this as much as you want, and it's quite a savings going this way. They also have the net weight 8-ounce ones, which are still much cheaper than buying this. I believe the 8-ounce ones, I'll list the prices below. I don't know, the prices fluctuate a little, but this is usually 2/3 of the price of an 8-ounce canister, although it's half the size. It just costs a lot more because of the material. So it is more economical to refill it instead of buying new small ones. Now, of course, there's a lot of people saying, oh no, if you refill it, you're gonna risk having it blow up in your face. There are several things you need to know about. Now, here is butane. Butane, out of all these, have the least amount of pressure. So you can actually put butane in here because this is designed for isobutane and as well as a propane mix. So if you put it in here, you can even fill this up to the normal net weight and you should be safe. Should be safe. There are situations where you could not be, but that is safe. Now, other isobutane propane mixes, also safe. But I wouldn't recommend filling it to the full level, maybe just half or as much as you need. Now, propane. Propane actually has the highest pressure of all the gases here. So if you fill this to the same amount of net weight with propane, this will potentially explode. Who knows if it would? I really don't want to try any experiments out here, but there's a good chance it could. So I would avoid using straight propane. With the right adapters, you can fill it with propane, and propane is actually the cheapest of all these gases, butane being the second cheapest, although it's a little harder to find, and then the isobutanes are much more expensive than any of these. And propane, of course, you can find anywhere. Walmart seems to have the best deals for the like the sets of 2. So I tend to go there if I need to get one of these. Now, the times I won't refill one of these is a lot of times the bottom After you use it enough times, you might actually get some rust along here or along the bottom or along the edge here. If any of your small containers have any signs of rust, I would just not use them at all. Or I would use them until they're empty, but I would not refill them at all. Because as there's more and more rust there, the seals begin to weaken. So at some point it could just burst and have isobutane, just propane mix just shooting everywhere, and that could cause a serious problem if you're somewhere where there's any kind of heat source and it ignites it, especially when it's kept indoors like this. So out of all these gases, butane performs the least best or the worst in cold. At 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 0 Celsius, right around there, butane will no longer turn to gas. It'll stay a liquid. So if you try to use this when it's, say, 20 degrees Fahrenheit, unless you heat this somehow, like keeping it in your jacket or something, it will not work. So last year I had a long stretch where I was car camping out in South Dakota and Wyoming and Montana, and this I didn't even try to use it because it wouldn't work at all. Now propane works the best in cold. Out of all these, I forget the exact temperature, but this works the best. So ideally you would keep using this. A lot of van users do use this in their vans. Again, if you have a proper mount or something, it might be good. And this is the cheapest and works the best in the cold. So this is definitely something you should use often. But again, the size is a little too much. Now these little camp fuels, they come in a variety of mixtures depending on the brand that you get. Like the Coleman type you get will be a butane propane mix, and tests have shown, I've read online, that even in the cold it works really well. Although if you don't really shake it up big time beforehand, when it's really cold, the butane will stay a liquid and the propane will gas off. So when you're done, you'll actually have a whole bunch of butane in there. So that's not the best. A lot of manufacturers use isobutane, which is a type of butane with a slight molecular change, and it has a much lower temperature rating for evaporation, so it won't stay a liquid. Now this is Jetboil and this is MSR, and they both use a isobutane propane mix. And that's, I believe, because if it's straight isobutane, it's going to cost a bunch of money, and propane works well in the cold as well, so mix it up. Now the percentages, they don't say, but online you can kind of read reports, and they vary a lot because nobody really knows for sure. But isobutane and propane mixed together, they have the lowest temperature rating for working. Of course, there's a certain threshold where it's not going to work at all. So you're going to need one of those whisper lights that has the little primer dish that heats up the fuel as it comes up to evaporate it. But that's a whole different matter altogether. One thing is, isobutane is more expensive. So you'll find that canisters that use the butane propane mix will be cheaper than isobutane propane. So what this is here is, they're both identical, they're female ends. So you can actually take one of these canister stoves, screw it on one end, and take another one and screw it on the other, and you can refill from one to another. Now this one here is just one brand. There are a variety of brands out there, and this one's just the one I bought because it was small. It has its pros and cons. It's aluminum, so you have to be gentle when you thread, because you can totally damage your threading, because this is usually steel. I'll show you how these work. So before you do anything, make sure that adapter is closed. If you have it open at all and you screw it in, it's just going to shoot out the other side, and it could be funny, I guess, but make sure it's closed. So all you do is just screw it on. When you got to screw it on quickly, because there's always going to be a little bit of escape. That always happens with any stove as well, so part of the game. And then you take one of these and you just screw it on top. I used to think that, sure, if you take an empty one with less pressure and you take a new one with more pressure, certainly if you just throw it together and you do this, it'll just drip down. The liquid gas will go down. But I found it just doesn't happen at all. The holes are too small and won't just pour down because of the heavier weight in here. I have to, every time, put this in the refrigerator for a while and chill it, or I have to take this and kind of warm it against my body. I don't like to leave it in the sun or anything like that, or shake it a lot. But the best way I found, and the safest way, is just put this in the refrigerator for a while and then do it. So I'm going to refill this. I'll show you how it's done. 5.4 ounces. So one thing I found is once you take it out, you got to do it pretty quickly, because the longer you let it sit, the warmer it's going to get, and you can only get so much in. The colder it stays the whole time, you can get more in. I've actually, as it's going, I put my head against it to try to keep it warmer, to try to get more in. But for now, I'm just going to put in a few ounces. So that's it. You just have to hold the full one on top, and then you just turn it. Now this little guy, I liked it because it was small, but I found that sometimes I can't get my finger in there because it's too tight. I wish it was a little longer so I can grab it, but here you go. At some point, you can hear it slowing down, I believe because the temperature from the canister above is mixing with the colder temperature below, and it's kind of evening out. So it's reducing, or it's increasing the temperature of this. So it's not taking the propane as well. So let's turn it on again. There's still sound coming through. All right. So I believe with that little bit, and with how cold it was, probably got at least maybe an ounce. Let's see if we got an ounce. So of course, every time you put it on and take it off, you lose a little bit of gas. So there's always a little waste, but let's see if we got 1 ounce. All right. I found the best way to take it off is hold it straight and just try to spin it as you can, as hard as you can, so you get the circular momentum kind of spinning it, and it pops right off. So let's weigh it out. We have 6.8 ounces, so we got 1.4 ounces in it. Nice. So one of the reasons people like alcohol stoves is they get the little bottle for their alcohol, and they could put in exactly how much alcohol they need per day of backpacking. They know exactly how much alcohol they need to boil, say, 2 cups of water, and then they just fill the bottle with so much. Now with these, I found I could boil 2 cups of water with a little less than 0.2 ounces of fuel. So say if I was going to go on to a 5-night backpacking trip and I was only going to have dinner, no breakfast, I would just need, we round up so we don't run out, I would need 0.2, so we'll need 1 ounce of fuel. So if this was empty and I just put in 1.4, this would be good for 6 nights, 6 cooks anyway. So that way, if you have an empty canister in perfect condition, no rust or anything, no damage, no dents, you can actually fill it with exactly how much fuel you're going to need per your entire trip. So you don't carry around 3.53 ounces of fuel from a new canister that you necessarily don't need. Now, of course, when you fly somewhere and you have to pick up a new canister, it's going to happen regardless. And if you're on a through hike, you always wind up getting a new one anyway, and you just tough it up. Carry the new one until you run out, or you carry 2 at some point. But if you're going on a trip that's just a few nights, you can actually take as little fuel as you'll need and not carry more. So if you count every gram, every ounce, instead of carrying a brand new one, you can actually carry one with just the amount of fuel you'll need plus the empty weight of this, and that way you can kind of cut weight on that. Whereas the new one, like this one here, is 7 ounces new full. So 7 ounces, or you can carry 4 ounces. So yeah, it's not a lot, but you still cut 3 ounces, and 3 ounces is still almost 1/5 of a pound, and they all do add up. So that will help a lot. I don't know if you knew my plans for this year before this whole COVID thing came up, but Tina, my girlfriend, was gonna through hike the CDT, and I was gonna drive support for her. And I knew that each stop I can get a fuel canister with just the amount of fuel she needs per day, or per trip until I meet her again. So if it was gonna be 5 nights and she cooked twice a day, I would need 0.2 ounces, 5, 10, 2 ounces of fuel. So she'd have to carry about 5.5 ounces of fuel instead of a brand new one each time. And every time you meet her, I can hand her off another one with just the amount of fuel she needs for that day as well, for that leg as well. And because of that, I actually bought several of these big ones and I have less use of them right now. But these are, again, much cheaper than these little ones. So that was going to work out for us really well, but it kind of didn't work out this year. So I have several of these I'm trying to use up, or at least not use up, because they store really well. But I do enjoy having these little ones because these little ones fit in my mug. The 8-ounce ones do not, so it's another big hassle. But so on a through hike, some people suggested carrying one of these. They are light and small. That way when one canister gets really empty, you can kind of fill it in from another. But again, the target canister, you have to get it cooled down or heat up the canister you're going to have on top that you're trying to empty out. And I found, I mean, with the fridge it's easy. In the woods it might be hard unless you have a stream, a nice cool stream there. Or, of course, the alternative is to heat up the other one. And again, I don't like to heat them up so much. I'd rather chill them than heat them. But if they're almost empty, I guess it's safe. But I don't think you find almost empty canisters as often as you would think. There was one log cabin somewhere in Northern California or Oregon somewhere. But there were a ton of canisters there, and you shook them, they were all empty. Like you didn't hear anything. People that sleep there actually use it. So if there's a canister with a little bit of alcohol or a little bit of fuel in there, they'll actually use it while they're there for the night, boil their water, and then put the canister back so that way they don't use their canister. So every canister there gets empty. Or if at all, they're just going to have 0.1, 0.2 ounces of fuel in there. And and that just, it's not the best. I mean, I say just go for getting a new one each time you need it. I wouldn't bother with this on a through hike. So again, the only downside I think about this one here is this little knob is too short. I just cannot reach it sometimes, especially if I tighten it too hard before putting it on, and you have to go like this, try to get it. If I did it again, I would get the one with the longer knob that comes out a little bit more. If they have one that's steel, that would even be better instead of aluminum. But for now, works really well. So highly recommend it. It has certain uses, but it's not for all uses. Another thing car campers might want to use is one of these little adapters. It's actually so you can put butane, straight butane, into one of these canisters. Do it. Butane is cheaper than the isobutane mixes, so if you really need to, and you definitely aren't going to be camping anywhere where it's freezing temperature, that would work well, and it's definitely the cheapest way that's safe, because again, this could blow up your canister, so I would not do it. So yeah, you could do this and just kind of fill it in as much as you need. I am not sure, I've never tested it, so I'm not quite sure if you need to chill. I would say the pressure for propane is much higher than the pressure for butane. So if you did this, I would wager that unless this was chilled, this bottom one was chilled, it would try to force the propane gas up actually. So, and these are not meant for the forces, the air pressure forces that propane has. So I would definitely chill this before doing it, or use an empty one before you put this in there. Anytime you wonder whether you should do something, it's always better to choose the safe option. And if you think it's gonna be bad, just don't do it.